Welcome to The Real Tea. I'm your host, Tammy Murphy, broker-owner of RH2L, bringing Miami Valley real homes to love.
And I'm Ellie Sollenberger to give my perspective as a home buyer.
We're going to give you the key to Miami Valley real estate. Hi, good morning or afternoon, I guess it is, and welcome. We are here excited today. We have a special guest. We call this middle seat our hot seat, so today it might be more apropos than you would recognize.
I like it.
Anyway, so tell us who you are and why you're here.
Wonderful. Well, my name is John McManus, and thank you to everybody for tuning in. I'm the Montgomery County Treasurer, and I was elected in 2020, took office in 21, and it's a role that I just absolutely love. And as County Treasurer, I'm responsible for three main functions. The collection of property taxes.
Ooh, our favorite subject.
Yes. And I also serve as the county's banker and investment officer. And along with the role as well comes service on a number of different boards and commissions with the county. Probably for your purposes, that'll be most interesting. I serve as a member of the board of directors for the Montgomery County Land Bank, which is a wonderful organization near and dear to my heart. We're repurposing a lot of problem properties.
Awesome.
Yes.
We have lots of topics that we could cover then, so.
I like it.
I know you and Ellie know each other, and there's a history here. So
yes, one of my favorite people in the world.
It's such a small world and how things evolve around.
Truly.
Yes.
Truly.
Well, let's go ahead and dive into some of those really big topics on there. I kind of had some hot sheets here to say.
Okay.
What do we want to talk about? Because I think people are right now most interested in property taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, everybody saw probably a pretty big increase in our communities.
Yes.
And are you still getting phone calls?
Oh, we're getting phone calls, and I don't blame folks.
Right.
I mean, I really don't. Property taxes are something, and by the way, with the County Treasurers Association, it's our statewide association, we're working on some great legislation. And property tax reform is actually a really big topic in Columbus right now. But, I think, and I agree with folks, that property taxes, there's just, in the state of Ohio, there's just no adequate stopgap, if you will.
Right.
A lot of other states have ceilings, have limits, have things in place to prevent any type of extraordinary increase that takes people by surprise. And that's what we're seeing across the state of Ohio. The average increase, not of the property tax due amount, but of the home's tax value is determined by each county auditor. In Montgomery County, it went up into the I think it was 34%, 35% on average. But you have counties like Franklin County, Columbus, where it was above 40%.
Wow.
And I think we're in a period nationally where, there's interest rates through the roof, inflation through the roof, costs are exploding on everything. And then here come the property taxes. And folks have just had enough. And I don't blame them. I pay a hefty amount on my property as well, but I knew that when I bought it. Mm-hmm. But you look at the tax increases that have gone into effect over the years, even if you count out the levies that people vote on, just in the reappraisals. And you just have to stop and pause and ask yourself, is this really the best system?
Right.
We need to look at other states and see how they're doing it. And so I'm hopeful that something will get done in Columbus.
So I know I went to the legislative meetings in Columbus, and they were talking about there are currently 5 different bills that are being discussed, all dealing with property tax.
Yes.
So it's anywhere from renegotiating maybe that basis of homestead exemption, maybe looking at something specific for seniors, people who are on fixed incomes, and capping them. I think from what I heard, it would be great if we could get some kind of a hybrid, a little bit of all the best things.
Yes.
But I wasn't very happy with when they said that, they've only passed a few number of bills for the year where they have like over 700 that's been proposed. And it doesn't sound like we have high hopes that anything's going to happen quick. So is there a House bill specifically that you are really high on, that you think is the best that we need to really be informed about to vote on?
That's a great point. So, to your point, there were so many property tax bills being introduced. And by the way, not every bill that's introduced is actually introduced to pass. Some of it is just campaign,
Right.
campaign fodder. But so many with the intent of having it passed were introduced that members were saying, "Oh my gosh, we need to do something." So the leaders of the Ohio legislature came together and said, "We need to form a joint committee on property tax review and really kind of consolidate this effort." And so that's what's happening right now. And there was just such a range, as you put it, of different solutions of let's help everybody. And then it's no, let's help seniors. And then it's no, let's help people who are under a certain income level. And there was so much back and forth. The legislature had to sit down and try and consolidate. I used to be a lobbyist, and I would not say this lightly, but I am truly optimistic that something meaningful will be done in the area of property taxes. It's just reached such a fever pitch in the state of Ohio that I think the legislature has no choice but to do something, frankly.
Right.
My favorite bill is, and one that I've been personally working on with the General Assembly, is Senate Bill 186, which would require that all delinquent property taxes be paid before a property can be sold or transferred. Because right now in the state of Ohio, it is perfectly legal, however absurd, that one can transfer or sell their property with however much delinquent taxes on there. And it's a real insult because you have properties that are sold and transferred 3, 4, 5 times without delinquent taxes, ever being paid.
How is that even possible?
It's absurd.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
Well, ordinarily, and in the real estate biz, there are title agents.
Right.
All these things are done to ensure that things are done the proper and right way.
The normal process makes sure that those property taxes are paid, that nobody's inheriting it, and
Absolutely.
That's what we know as the norm.
And you have to have that for a general warranty deed.
Right.
But with these quitclaim deeds, I could sign a property over to Ellie right now. Let's say I owned it and I ran up the delinquent taxes $10,000. I could just sign it over to her and say, "Hey Ellie, you want to buy this property? I'll sell it to you for 20. Just FYI, there's 10 grand in delinquent taxes." Or even worse, which we're seeing across Ohio right now, I may not even tell Ellie about the delinquent taxes. There are all kinds of scams happening.
Yes.
Isn't that something, though, that a title company should find
Oh, yes.
for the closing?
If you're using
If
one.
you're using one.
But like he's saying,
Yeah.
in a quick claim deed process, it may be that's transferred and not a real process is used.
We could do it right. I could go on Google right now, download a blank quitclaim deed form, and sign my house over to you or Ellie, even if I had $100,000 in delinquent taxes, and I walk away with the money, and one of y'all gets the delinquencies, and then it's up to the county to try and catch up, which we've been doing a marvelous job at, I might add. I'll add a plug in about that later. But there are so many property tax reforms that need to happen, not only for folks who are playing by the book, but also to stop some of this nonsense that's happening all across the state.
Right. And scams is a whole nother topic that I'm sure we could really dive into. But the big thing is individuals who are handling transactions without calling a realtor, without calling a title company, without calling the county commissions or anything like that, the county department there, somebody who knows this isn't normal, this isn't how it's typically done, and are you even aware that there are delinquent property taxes on there?
Right.
I know I have an out-of-state investor who has several properties in the city of Dayton, and he was contacted out of the blue by somebody, and I've been his realtor forever, right? So anything that's been assessed with any of this or been done, I'm usually getting the phone call. Well, they contacted him directly, and he's like, "I don't know what this person is trying to do. They're telling me they want to buy all of my 5 properties and this and that." And so I try to make the phone call and immediately find out it's just somebody who's working a scam.
Yep.
And they're working an angle trying to catch the person off guard to say, "Hey, I'll throw money at it. You don't have to worry about any of this." And it's like, just don't go down the rabbit hole.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, that's why I'm such a big fan of realtors and title agents. In fact, we even host an open house for them at the treasurer's office to try and build those relationships, because it's realtors and title agents who help keep us informed, and we keep them informed. Because we're kind of the clearinghouse for all the property tax issues, in the county. So that's very helpful. So yes, please hire a realtor and use a title agent. Everybody. Yes. And no, they did not ask me to say that.
Thanks for that endorsement.
Of course.
I know that, we're very blessed in the Montgomery County area specifically because of the working relationship that we have with the county auditor's office, with your department, with everything that goes on down there. You guys are so helpful. If I don't reach out and ask the questions, I have confidence that if my clients reach out and call, that they're going to get insight and information that they need.
Yes.
And that's really what it comes down to. Going back to the property tax thing, I had clients who had moved into a house in one of those historic areas that was getting a lot of revitalization. And this was an upsize for them. They were going into this area that they were really going to do this, right?
Yes.
But they hadn't yet made any improvements to the property. So it was 3 years prior, when the last triennial came through.
Right.
And they called me and they were crying. And they're like, we're not going to be able to afford to stay here with the proposed property tax increase.
Yeah.
It was such an amount. And the research that I can do, obviously, is get in there and look at public records, look at the history, because I know the property, I know my clients.
Yes.
I know what they're telling me is legitimate.
Absolutely.
And we were able to make a dispute on the basis of their home was in this area, but it had not had any of the improvements. So why did their home increase to the level that it did, where other homes that had made these improvements, additions and everything that was done, were at lower tax basis?
That's right.
And that, I think, is really important. While it seems like the process is maybe a little hard to think about disputing your property taxes and going before your board or anything, I've always found, at least with reasonable information that's presented,
Yes.
it has been beneficial to
Yes.
the clients.
Yes, and I am one of 3 members of the Board of Revision. In all counties, it is the chair of the county commission, the county auditor, and the county treasurer. In a county of our size, we employ fiduciaries, representatives to sit on the panel for us. But in these small counties, it's actually the elected officials who do it. But I always stress to folks, this is a process. A free process open to you as a property owner in this county, and you absolutely should come contest your property's value if you think the county got it wrong. And that's incredibly important. And even if, let's say, the Board of Appeals, I've worked in a couple of courthouses too, but let's say the Board of Revision gets it wrong, or you feel that the Board of Revision ruled not in your favor, you then can contest it further. You can contest it to the Board of Tax Appeals in Columbus, or your local Court of Common Pleas. So there are many, many avenues for folks to protest, if you will, their appraisal, and they should do that. And some people say, well, is the county going to be mad? No. I want you. I'm treasurer of this county, and I want you to utilize the Board of Revision.
Yes.
Because that is what you should be doing.
Right.
And because you know best, in my opinion, you know best what the value of your home is worth, and if you're contesting your value, you have probably looked at all of your surrounding properties. I was at a function last night. I spoke to a lady. She said, we live in like a Ryan Homes subdivision. My property was valued at X. Everyone else was valued at Y. We have the exact same floor plan. I did even an informal hearing with the board, and they said, no problem. We'll lower it to make it comparable. So always take a look.
Right.
Always take a look and do your research, and if you disagree, file that appeal. Now, one thing is important to note, the appeal process statutorily is only open the first quarter of the year.
Right.
So you gotta do it January through the end of March. Actually, it was April 1 this year because of I think it was like a leap year issue or something. But that is available to you. So,
and it's interesting
do it
because
next year.
most people are getting their tax bill probably end of January, early February. That's due for February, right? Middle of February.
It goes back and forth.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's generally January or February, and then the state will approve approve, our proposal. But yes, first half is due January or February.
So if you get that and that's your trigger, you don't have a lot of time because it ends, like you said, typically end of March, 1st of April, if that's the case.
That's right.
So you have to be proactive and know if you're already considering that and you're hearing the news that everything has gone up, then just be aware to do that. And then it's not done right away. Like you get the appeal process, you come in for the discussion,
right.
June, July, somewhere along there, maybe August.
We're actually doing some right now.
Oh, wow.
So we had about 3,000 filed this year. So many we had to actually seat a second board.
Wow.
So I have another representative doing that on the second board. So, and we're getting through them pretty quickly. And one thing that I always make sure to mention to folks who are thinking about going in front of the Board of Revision, and the county auditor actually has a great video on his website about some of the rules, and there's a difference, I might say, between an informal review where you have a conversation versus an actual hearing.
Yeah.
If you are appealing the value of your home, the two most important pieces of documentation, and no, this is not legal advice, everybody, but the two most important pieces of documentation you can have is an appraisal of your home and or comparable sales in the area. And so, do that. If you can afford to do that, do that. And
Now, here's the question, because I have had clients say, well, you mean I have to pay an appraiser, whatever, $500, $750 to come out and get this? Or can your realtor provide enough information with the sold data, the comp information that we have, which is how it's worked for my clients anyway.
Wonderful.
We've been able to do it that, yes, if they have a recent appraisal, that certainly helps. But at the least, they could come in with their realtor assistance and have that documentation that you need.
Totally. I mean, the appraisal is kind of the gold standard because it's very specific to your property in that moment. But I shouldn't say equally, but just right up there with it, and work with your realtor. If your realtor is willing to help you with this, and look at the comps around your property, and in terms of sales, because sales, at least one would assume, in most cases, are based on appraisals.
Right.
So I think that's why. That's why the comparable sales are right up there with an individual recent appraisal of your home.
Right. And they can bring in a legal representative if they want, but they don't have to.
They do not have to.
They could bring in their realtor, but they don't have to.
Correct.
So this is something that's pretty open and easy to follow, that an individual themselves could come in and
Absolutely. And we do it on Zoom now, too, unless you really want to come in. Zoom was kind of a pandemic thing. And it's just kind of stuck. Folks really liked it.
Right.
And so we've kept it as an option, and it's very highly utilized.
Awesome. Well, that's great.
Yes.
Great information.
Cool. So I also wanted to talk today about some of the programs that your office offers for the citizens of Montgomery County.
Wonderful. Well, some of our most popular programs, and we've had great success really expanding usage of these programs, and they fit two different types of areas. Number one is prepayment, which is great. We actually sent out about 40,000 letters across the county last year to folks who would qualify for prepayment but who are not currently enrolled in prepayment. And just to kind of give you an example of what it's like, for those of you, I know the realtor knows and Ellie knows, but if you're paying your taxes through an escrow, arrangement where you're paying essentially your property taxes every month as part of the payment on your mortgage note, it's the same. Prepayment works the same way. You come in, you say you want to get on prepayment with our office. We then break your first and second half property taxes into monthly payments. And then you, as the property owner, can pay every month. And the genius behind this program is, and it's really becoming more popular statewide, is it gives folks more control over their own budget. We know life happens, and sometimes you may forget it's tax month, and all of a sudden you owe $3,000 or whatever for your first half or your second half. Well, folks don't always have that laying around.
Right.
But if you know that you have this amount of money due every single month, it really helps folks. So how it works, we have multiple options for people. We can set you up electronically, where it is automatically deducted from your bank account. That could even be set up on a monthly process, or it can be every first or second half. Or you can pay by check every single month, and we set you up on a plan with a planned amount. And it is a great program.
Right.
I will tell you, it's most utilized by folks who have paid their property off.
Right.
I mean, some people who have an active mortgage, they want to enroll in our prepayment, but it's mostly utilized by folks who have paid their home off. And I will add this too. I think it's important, let's say you have somebody in your family who's maybe, getting older, or maybe it's someone, who needs a little bit of extra help. That way, that can just be automatically deducted from their account.
Right.
And that really helps people too in that regard. The other program, and this is a very, very, very powerful program, what I'm about to tell you about next, is the delinquency payment plan. It's a delinquency contract. And it is based on, both this program and the program I just mentioned are based on Ohio Revised Code, state law. But as you know, part of the sad but often necessary part of my job is to collect delinquent taxes through things like the sale of a tax lien on a property, or in a worst case scenario, foreclosing on someone's property. That's where I work with the prosecutor to have the property entered into a court case and then sold at auction to the highest bidder, and then that will take care of through the sale, that will take care of the delinquency associated with the property. If there is someone who is in a home who is having trouble paying his or her taxes, the best thing would be A, to pay it, but B, if you can't do that right now, we get it, you come to our office and you see if you qualify for a delinquency payment plan, a delinquency contract. If you are active in that contract, it keeps you off of the eligibility list for a foreclosure or for a tax lien. But it is a contract. And so we have people sign it. We as one party, you as the other party, both have to adhere to the terms of the contract, which means you need to be making your payments every month in accordance with what you agreed to at the beginning. And if you don't, we're going to void it. And then you're re-eligible for those enforcement actions. Because people often think, I'll just send a couple $100 in, here and there, and the county will just know I'm trying. Well, we have a 250,000 parcels in Montgomery County.
Right, it's a lot.
Yeah, some of these counties have 10, 14,000. We have over 250,000. You got to be on the list if you want to protect your property. If you know someone who's behind in their property taxes, you need to tell them to look into that delinquency contract with our office. Because it's incredibly powerful, and as realtors and people who are involved in the real estate business, you'll know we are seeing foreclosures of all types go up right now.
Yeah.
Oh, huge. I mean, am I filing a lot more? Absolutely, I am. Are the mortgage lenders filing a lot more? Absolutely, they are. Are the tax lien holders filing more? Yes, and so it's. Of course, not at the 2008 levels, but it is on the increase.
Right.
And you look at the data coming out of the Federal Reserve and everything. I mean, people are spending more on their credit cards. Those savings accounts that were there during the pandemic have been depleted to a significant degree on the national average, and people are having a harder time paying their bills.
Sure.
So people need to be aware of the tools that are available in case you find yourself in a situation where you think you may lose your home because you're not paying your property taxes.
And again, this is something that you want to address as soon as you know that you're coming into that issue, as soon as the hardship happens, as soon as you realize, I'm not going to be able to catch up.
Exactly.
Because having that conversation is at least the start to learning more about what could happen to save it.
Thank you for mentioning that. I tell everybody, call me what you will, but I am the county's bill collector. And just like with every other bill collector, the best thing you can do is communicate. And, you can't hide from bill collectors these days. It's not like the old days where it was just like paper and ledger. It is all electronic. Right. It is automated, and so the best thing you can do is communicate with your bill collector. Sorry. And let us know, hey, I'm trying here. What can I do? What programs are available? I want to make this right. But to your point, do it early. It does nobody any good to allow that debt to accumulate to such a degree that you can't get out from under it. That's why, frankly, and I know this really isn't part of the program, that's why, frankly, all of this rent forbearance and foreclosure forbearance that happened during the pandemic. I get it. It made a lot of politicians feel good. And it made a lot of politicians be able to say, look, I'm trying to do something. All they were doing, in my opinion, was putting a false narrative in people's heads saying, you don't have to pay your bills.
Right.
And do you think the bills just stopped? No.
Right.
They keep being added to people's total.
Right.
And then, whammy. You
Right.
see these foreclosures skyrocket and evictions skyrocket because people were given this false narrative that they didn't have to pay their bills anymore.
Right.
And the chickens are coming home to roost in a big way. You've seen evictions go through the roof. And I hate it for folks.
Right.
But in my opinion, politicians should have said, "Hey, look, I know it's tough, but we're not gonna put out there into the world that it's okay not to pay your bills for another year."
Well, you would think that would be the case, right?
One would think. But that's just my opinion.
But to your point about when things were enacted for COVID through the pandemic, that kind of reset that took place in people's minds where they weren't paying those things that they were responsible for. When you break the habit of what someone knows as their routine, whether it's just now you've reset and you have a new habit, I've got all this money, I don't need to pay, I don't have any bills to pay because everybody's on a reset.
Right.
We are so far out of that time
Yes.
that you think that it wouldn't be the norm for somebody to think, well, I don't have to pay my rent, I don't have to pay my property tax, I don't have to pay my mortgage, and yet we're seeing the hesitancy, and I don't know if it's because they think there is another shoe that's going to drop.
Right.
That because it's an election year, maybe there's these things that are just magically going to get wiped away.
More free money.
I mean,
Right.
you don't know.
Or you
Right.
can look at it another way, and people are trying to put food on the table.
Yes.
Groceries have gone through the roof. So are you either going to pay your mortgage, which could be held off a couple months, or am I going
Right.
to feed my kids right now?
Right now.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And I one thing I encourage people to do, and realtors, I know realtors already do it, but talk with your realtor and make sure you ask the questions about, if I purchase this property, what are my monthly expenses going to be? And really understand that. I have folks all the time that call into the office. I've even taken these calls personally saying, oh my gosh, I just bought this house and I found out what my monthly expenses are going to be because I just found out what the monthly taxes are going to be. I can't afford this.
Yeah.
And, well, I'm sorry, you know?
That's an early on conversation to have.
Bingo.
Because if your lender isn't doing it and your realtor isn't doing, then you've been failed by the process.
Bingo.
Because both of those are fiducially responsible to make sure that you
Absolutely.
understand. And when someone comes and they say, well, I have this as my budget, this is what I want to spend on my house. Okay, well then if we are tied strictly to a budget, now we have to factor in the property taxes in our search.
Yes.
Because in one community it might be $600 a month versus
Correct.
another that it could be $200, and your budget's only going to allow for the $200.
Yes.
So that's where that,
Yes.
what is that adage where they talk about a champagne?
Oh, on a beer budget?
On a beer budget.
You have a champagne, diet
beer
on a beer
budget.
budget or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Well, I was shocked when we bought in Greene County and the property taxes were just so much cheaper than Montgomery County.
Yeah.
They are.
Montgomery County's getting a bad rap on our property taxes.
Right. But now here's what's interesting. So 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you could pass any levy you wanted to in Montgomery County. You look at these recent election results, it ain't happening that way anymore. People are saying no, no, no.
Yep.
And the default used to be, of course it'll pass. Now the default is, I don't think so. Conversely, there are a lot of folks who may have left Montgomery County for the regional counties for the lower tax rate. But with that population also comes the need. Government says, oh my gosh, now we have to pay for services for all these people. Now you're seeing taxes starting to increase in these surrounding counties.
True.
And so it will just follow.
Right.
And that's again why we need some type of state consistency in the law. So, but yes, I mean that is a lure for sure. I mean there are folks, and I've got friends in Washington Township. I myself live in Centerville, but maybe I shouldn't use any specific examples. But they say, hey, if I moved 100 yards down the street to Warren County or Greene County, I could save a lot of money on my property taxes.
Right.
And the converse always is, you have to think too about Montgomery County is a wonderful place to age, for instance. there are all these different types of services who are available to people who are elderly, who may be living with a disability, because those human services are paid for with property taxes. And if you're a resident of this county, that is available to you. And so, a lot of the things that our property taxes pay for here in Montgomery County, they don't have in a lot of the other counties. And not that I'm giving a value judgment on one or the other, it's just a reality. So, so you have people saying, I get it. You have some people saying, I like the services, and you have some people saying, I'll take care of the services on my own. I just want a monthly lower bill. And so, it's a lot of options out there on everything.
So I think that's a great point. Let's talk specifically what goes into those property taxes. What are the benefits for Montgomery County residents? Because most people are only looking at when it snows are the roads getting cleared? What's the trash services?
Right.
Those are the two big questions that I get.
Interesting. Yes.
Because schools are usually with levies and things like that, but I think there's still some basis. So why don't you clear that up for us?
It is huge. One of my first questions always is when I'm speaking in front of a group, well, not one of my first always, but usually, is does anyone know what the percentage is of your property tax check that you send into the county? What percentage do you think goes to your local school district? And some people say 10%, 15%, 12%. It is 60. 60% of what you pay in property taxes goes to the school district in which jurisdiction your house lies. So that is a big deal. I'm a former
does that go up if there is a school levy that passes?
Absolutely. I'll tell you a little political trick here. And I'm a former school board member myself, and I know how hard it is for school districts to fight for revenue as well. But sometimes you just got to live within your means, But so there's an old trick in these levy campaigns. You'll see it. You'll drive by these yard signs. It says, "Vote for issue whatever, won't raise taxes." Well, what they don't tell you is if you vote no, your property taxes will go down, because there are two types of levies. There's a levy that is a new levy, where the taxing entity is requesting an increase, or a renewal, which is merely for a continuation at your current rate.
Something that's already been in place.
Right.
But it's kind of a catch-22, because you want to keep your property value up, which would be a good school.
Absolutely.
And good schools need money to operate.
And everybody has to make that determination. And that is a huge argument. There's a reason why Centerville and Oakwood and other jurisdictions, why their property values are so high. It's because their schools are so excellent, and so people have a vested interest in ensuring that their or their property value stays at the same level. And that is always kind of the give and tug. Is, am I willing to part with this money this time in order to ensure that I have a good school for my kids, or my community's kids, or to keep my current home at its value, at its current value. So yes, property taxes are hugely complex, but a lot of other entities benefit from property taxes. People all the time say, "Oh, you're probably raising those taxes because you're keeping it in the county billing." Well, number one, I don't set the rates. I just send the bills, right? Everything is segregated in terms of duties. Treasurers merely send the bills, collect, and then keep the money safe, and then give to the auditor to then dispense.
So you're not taking vacations or doing anything crazy like that?
No. And the county gets between 2% and 4% depending.
Right.
So it's very, very small what the county gets. But the other entities benefiting from it are cities, townships. That's a big deal for townships, because they're restricted from collecting certain types of taxes. But then also the parks, the schools, and here Montgomery County Human Services, and also, I might add, Sinclair and Miami Valley Career Tech, depending on what part of the county you live in. So property taxes fund a broad range of programs and local governments, and it has a huge impact. One thing I would encourage you to do, if you live in Montgomery County, the county auditor, Carl Keith, on his website, you can pull that up and pull up your property on the mcrealestate.org. And then go to the left where it says levy distribution. Click on levy distribution. Once there, you can see how every single dollar is distributed that you pay in property taxes. And I think you will be really surprised.
Yeah, that's really, really an interesting thing. In fact, when we go through here and edit this, we'll make sure we do that as a screenshot to show people, because it is very it's eye-opening to understand. Yes. It's first, people who don't have children in schools any longer or at all are the first to say, well, I don't want to pay for the school system.
Right.
Okay, well, but what are the other benefits that you're getting out of this that you see that this is why you want to be in this community,
Absolutely.
right? And then I think the other side of that is just making sure we all have to be responsible, as we were talking about. COVID kind of set the wrong dynamics in giving people a free ride or at least a pause. And I know a lot of people are expressing, well, why don't the school systems have to work within their budget? Why isn't there accountability for these other systems? Why do they just keep asking for more from us through our property taxes instead of meeting these budgets? We have to meet our budget, they have to meet theirs.
Yes.
So there's a little bit, I think, of a growing tension.
Huge.
Because I've seen it in some of the city council meetings and things where
Yes.
people are really starting to express that frustration because of the pinch that they're feeling.
That's right. You're exactly right. And and I say again, as a former school board member, I mean, it's incumbent. I felt that it was incumbent upon me as a school board member to review every single contract and expenditure that came before the school district. And I asked myself, is this necessary? Is it worth the money? I'm going to ask the questions at the board meeting. And sometimes it wasn't necessary. And so that's all part of a school board's role too, is really determine and work with your professional staff to determine if the budget you have is the best fit.
Right.
And, when I was on there, we didn't pass a levy. We worked really hard. We moved some things around. And guess what? Performance index actually went up. So it's not always about the money. These school districts, God bless them. I am a huge proponent of public education. And costs are going through the roof for them, just like everybody else. And these administrators and these teachers are working so hard to give their kids a great education and a great quality of life, and that costs money.
Sure.
And I get it 100%. But all of us in local government, school districts included, counties, cities, we have to look at the money that is before us and that we can realistically expect and count on and say, okay, let's maximize the dollars that we have available to us now.
Right.
Because like I mentioned, if I was still on that school board, I and tell all my colleagues, folks, the climate has changed.
For sure.
From where it was 5-10 years ago. And we should be starting with the assumption that if we put a levy on the ballot, we're probably going to be starting behind.
Right.
And that was not the way it used to be.
Right.
So it's tough. And who knows? Maybe it'll turn around when the economy gets better and people have more money in their pockets. But right now, it's a national thing, and people are hurting, and they're just not willing to sign up to increase their expenses at the level they used to be.
Right. And it goes into every aspect.
Yes.
I mean, from, like you mentioned, with the groceries, with the cost of putting kids in daycare, with school systems, with clothes. I mean,
everything.
The cost of your house, the cost of your gas. I mean,
Yes.
It's just every aspect is impacted by this. We certainly appreciate you coming in today.
It has been
thanks.
wonderful. Thank you both. Would love to come back and get more in depth.
We've got still more topics I'm sure we'll cover.
I would love to.
Sounds
Thanks
great.
everybody
Thank
for
you.
tuning in.
Bye-bye. Thanks for joining us today on the Real Tea Podcast. If you enjoyed the knowledge and entertainment today, please subscribe and share with your friends. We will be embarking on a journey that bridges the gap between realtors and clients, uncovering the heart and tea of real estate.